Empty those pockets, Grandma, Officer Deacon Nash sneered, his badge gleaming under the streetlight like a predator's eye. To him, her vulnerability was an opportunity. Her pension envelope? Just another score in uniform. "Where'd someone like you get this much cash?" he demanded, fingering the envelope's edge with practiced suspicion. "That's my month's pension, officer," Wilhelmina Carter whispered, her weathered hands trembling but her gaze steady. "Sure it is. Probably drug money. You people always have excuses," he spat, words aimed to wound an elder's dignity. Without hesitation, he pocketed the envelope, her entire month's survival, then shoved her against the wall. His partner laughed. They thought they were robbing a defenseless old woman. Instead, they'd targeted the mother of shadows. Because her son wasn't just anybody. Thaddeus Carter was the Pentagon's most lethal Black Ops commander. She shuffled home empty-handed. No rage, no threats, just a single phone call awaiting. What will happen when that call reaches her son halfway across the world? How will Commander Carter respond to those who preyed upon his mother? Will their badges protect them from what's coming? And what price will they and their entire department pay? Let's follow this escalating story to discover the answers. The Westside Community Credit Union stood as a weathered brick anchor in a neighborhood the city had largely forgotten. Every third Thursday, the small branch filled with elders collecting their monthly pensions, a ritual as dependable as the seasons. On this particular Thursday, rain tapped gently against windows clouded by decades of city grime, creating a hushed atmosphere inside the cramped space. Near the back of the slow-moving line stood Wilhelmina Carter. At 78, she carried her years with quiet dignity, despite the arthritis that bent her fingers and the diabetes that sometimes blurred her vision. Her silver hair was pulled into a neat bun, secured with 2 wooden pins her late husband had carved for her 50 years earlier. She wore a simple blue dress with a cardigan despite the summer heat, clothes clean but mended multiple times by practiced hands. Wilhelmina clutched her worn leather purse close to her body, a habit formed through decades of living in neighborhoods where vigilance was as necessary as breathing. Inside that purse lay her identification, 3 photographs of her only son in military uniform, and exactly $4.17. The pension money would make the difference between medicine and food this month. She wouldn't have to choose if the check cleared properly. Unlike the other seniors who traveled in protective groups, Wilhelmina made this journey alone. Her neighbors had offered to accompany her, but pride kept her independent. "Still got my wits and my legs," she told them with a gentle smile that didn't invite argument. What she didn't mention was that the 3-block detour to include her in their route would tax arthritic joints already struggling with the day's humidity. At the counter, the young teller, Jasmine according to her nameplate, greeted Wilhelmina with genuine warmth. "Mrs. Carter, your check came through fine this time. Full amount, no delays." The relief that washed over Wilhelmina's face was brief but profound. She counted the bills twice before sliding them into the plain white envelope, which disappeared into her inner coat pocket. "God bless you, child," she murmured, her voice carrying the soft cadence of her Louisiana upbringing. Outside, the rain had stopped, but puddles reflected the gray afternoon sky. Wilhelmina didn't notice the patrol car idling at the corner as she turned toward home, nor the 2 officers watching the credit union door with calculating eyes. She was focused on the mental calculations of bills to pay and medicine to purchase, unaware she had just become prey in uniform sight. Officer Deacon Nash drummed thick fingers against the steering wheel of the patrol car, his pale eyes tracking each elderly person who exited the credit union. His partner, Officer Landon Briggs, younger and eager to impress, leaned forward when Wilhelmina emerged. "Third Thursday," Nash muttered, a smirk playing across his face. "Pension day for the welfare crowd." Briggs nodded, already understanding the unspoken ritual. 6 months partnered with Nash had taught him how things really worked in this precinct. "That one's alone," he noted, nodding toward Wilhelmina. "No witnesses." Nash's smile widened, revealing a chipped front tooth from a bar fight years earlier. "Perfect timing. Captain's breathing down my neck about quotas, and I'm short on cash this month." He started the engine. "Let's provide some community service." They pulled alongside Wilhelmina as she approached the corner of Maple and 43rd, a stretch of street conveniently hidden from both traffic cameras and businesses. Nash angled the cruiser to block her path, while Briggs stepped out, hand resting casually on his holster. "Afternoon, ma'am," Nash called through his open window, voice dripping with false concern. "We've had reports of counterfeit bills circulating after pension day. Need to check what you're carrying." Wilhelmina clutched her purse tighter, instinct warning her despite the uniforms. I just got this from the credit union, officer." Nash exited the vehicle, towering over her small frame. "That's exactly where the counterfeits are coming from. We're doing you a favor, checking before you try to spend them somewhere and get in trouble." "I don't think," she began, but Briggs had already circled behind her, creating a trap of blue uniforms. "Listen," Nash's voice hardened, dropping all pretense of courtesy. "Either you cooperate with law enforcement, or we can discuss obstruction charges downtown." Fear rippled across Wilhelmina's weathered face as Nash's hand shot out, not waiting for permission. "Let's see what you've got hidden away," he demanded, fingers already digging toward her coat pocket where the precious envelope waited. The old woman's protest died in her throat as decades of learned caution toward authority strangled her rightful resistance. Nash's fingers closed around the envelope with practiced precision. He pulled it free from Wilhelmina's inner pocket while maintaining unwavering eye contact, a predator's stare meant to paralyze. The white envelope emerged, slightly crumpled from her protective grip. "What's this?" he questioned with theatrical suspicion, though both officers knew exactly what they'd found. "My pension, sir, for the month." Wilhelmina's voice remained steady despite the trembling that had started in her hands. "Please, I need that for my medicine." Nash made a show of opening the envelope, whistling low as he counted the bills. "That's quite a sum for someone like you," he remarked, emphasis making clear what someone like you meant. "I worked 43 years cleaning hospital rooms," she replied, dignity surfacing through fear. "Every penny's earned honest." Briggs shifted uncomfortably, newer to these inspections than his partner. Nash shot him a silencing glance before turning back to Wilhelmina. "Unfortunately, 3 of these bills match our counterfeit alert numbers," Nash lied smoothly, sliding the envelope into his uniform pocket. "We'll need to confiscate this as evidence." "But," Wilhelmina began, her voice finally breaking. "But nothing," Nash cut her off. "Consider yourself lucky we're not taking you in for questioning. Now, move along before we reconsider." He gave her shoulder a dismissive shove that nearly toppled her slight frame. As she stumbled to regain balance, both officers returned to their vehicle, mission accomplished. Through her shock, Wilhelmina registered their laughter as the patrol car pulled away. Wilhelmina didn't cry until she reached her apartment. The tears came silently as she locked her door with trembling hands, dignity maintained in public, surrendering only in private. She sank into the worn armchair by the window, the one her husband had died in 15 years earlier, and stared at her empty hands, No medicine this month, no food beyond what the church pantry might provide, no dignity in the face of uniformed thieves who saw her only as prey. After an hour of stillness, Wilhelmina moved to the rotary phone on her kitchen wall. Just one call, that's all it would take. One call to her son, who had told her, "Anything happens, Ma, you call this number, day or night." She hesitated, pride warring with necessity. The rotary dial clicked softly as she made her decision. 6,000 miles away, in a classified forward operating base on the Syrian-Iraqi border, Commander Thaddeus "Shadow" Carter was reviewing satellite imagery when his secure line buzzed. The red light indicated a call from the one number programmed to reach him anywhere, anytime. His mother's emergency line. In 16 years of special operations, that line had rung exactly twice. When his father died and when his mother needed emergency surgery 3 years ago. The satellite images forgotten, Thaddeus snatched the receiver. "Ma, what's wrong?" His mother's voice came through, steady but thin in the way he recognized as her containing deeper emotions. As she recounted the encounter, the officers, the theft, the humiliation. Thaddeus's expression remained unchanged, but the temperature around him seemed to drop degree by degree. The 3 subordinates in the command tent found reasons to step outside, instinctively sensing the gathering storm in their commander's stillness. "I wouldn't have called, but the medicine this month..." Wilhelmina's voice finally wavered. "You did exactly right, Ma." His voice was gentle with her in a way no one in his unit would recognize. "I need you to tell me everything you remember about these officers. Names, badge numbers, anything you saw." As Wilhelmina provided details, Officer Nash's chipped a tooth, Officer Briggs's nervous shuffling, the patrol car number partially visible. Thaddeus made notes with mechanical precision. 22 years in the most elite special operations units had trained him to catalog details under pressure. Those same years had taught him about predators, about systems of corruption, and about how power was actually exercised in the world's shadows. "I'm handling this, Ma. Today. Are you okay for now?" Her affirmation was followed by the predictable motherly concern. "Don't you do anything foolish, Thaddeus. They're still police officers." "Don't worry about me," he assured her, voice warm. "I'll call you tonight. Make sure you eat something." The line disconnected, and Commander Carter's face transformed. The warmth evaporated, replaced by a cold calculation that had made him legendary among America's most secretive military units. He barked orders to his communications specialist, initiating a series of calls that activated resources no local police department could imagine existed. Within 30 minutes, comprehensive files on officers Deacon Nash and Landon Briggs appeared on his secure tablet. Their personnel records, financial statements, disciplinary history, and GPS locations of their patrol movements for the past 6 months. The pattern was immediately clear. Targeted harassment of elderly pension recipients, particularly minorities, with Nash as the ringleader and Briggs as his eager apprentice. Commander Carter made one final call to a number few in government even knew existed. "Matthews," the voice answered. "I need a 48-hour leave and domestic transport. Family emergency." Carter's tone made clear this wasn't a request, but a courtesy notification. "Understood. Resources?" "Minimal. This is personal." The pause on the line spoke volumes about what personal meant coming from Commander Carter. "Approved. Transport awaiting. Any parameters I should be aware of?" "Local law enforcement involvement. No footprint." "Understood. Good hunting." 6 hours later, as darkness settled over his mother's neighborhood, Thaddeus Carter stepped from an unmarked sedan 3 blocks from her apartment building. He wore civilian clothes, nondescript jeans, a dark hoodie, and boots that made no sound on pavement. Nothing about his appearance suggested military, let alone one of the most lethal operatives in U.S. history. The only hint of his true nature was in his eyes, calculating, patient, seeing everything while being noticed by no one. He visited his mother first. The medicine she needed sat on her kitchen table, along with groceries and an envelope containing double what had been stolen. He stayed just long enough to ensure she was comfortable, before disappearing back into the night with a kiss to her forehead and a promise that justice was coming. "What are you going to do?" she asked, concern etching deeper lines around her eyes. Thaddeus smiled, the same gentle smile he'd inherited from her. "Nothing they don't deserve, Ma, but everything they've earned." Outside, he activated a small device that intercepted the police dispatch frequencies. He listened as Car 37, Nash, and Briggs called in their position for the midnight shift. They were patrolling the industrial district near the railroad yards. Perfect, isolated, few witnesses, the very conditions they had exploited against his mother. Commander Carter moved through shadows with practiced ease, a predator now hunting predators who had no concept of the force they had provoked with their casual cruelty. Officers Nash and Briggs sat in their patrol car beneath the broken streetlight behind the abandoned West Side packaging plant, splitting a pizza and counting the day's confiscations. This hidden spot had become their unofficial office for dividing spoils. Far from dashboard cameras, body cameras conveniently switched off. 260 from the old lady puts us at almost 500 today, Nash calculated, licking cheese from his fingers before reaching for Wilhelmina's envelope. "Not bad for a Thursday." Briggs nodded, still showing faint discomfort. "The old woman, though, taking her whole month's money." Nash snorted. "Getting soft? Her kind's been living off government handouts for decades. We're just taking our share." He tossed Briggs a 20. "There's your guilt tax. Feel better?" Neither officer noticed the shadow that detached itself from the darkness behind the dumpsters, nor the slight hiss of compressed air. Nash scratched suddenly at his neck, pulling away a small dart the size of a mosquito bite. "The hell?" he muttered, vision already blurring. Beside him, Briggs slumped forward, forehead hitting the dashboard with a dull thud. Commander Carter approached the vehicle with unhurried precision, appearing suddenly at the driver's window like an apparition. Nash's drugged mind registered only a dark figure before consciousness fled. When Nash awoke, the disorientation was immediate and complete. He was seated upright, arms secured behind him, not with handcuffs but with military-grade restraints that bit into his wrists. Across from him, Briggs was similarly bound, head lolling as he regained consciousness. They were inside the abandoned factory, moonlight filtering through broken windows. Between them stood a figure silhouetted against the weak light. Not in uniform or tactical gear, just ordinary clothes that somehow made the man more terrifying in his normalcy. "Officers Nash and Briggs," the voice was conversational, almost pleasant. "We need to discuss Wilhelmina Carter." Nash's police instincts kicked in despite his fear. "Who the fuck are you? You just assaulted police officers." The blow came without warning, precise, controlled, and delivered with such professional detachment that Nash didn't register pain until after his chair had been righted from where it toppled. "Interesting," Carter said, crouching to meet Nash's eye level. "Your first instinct is to claim authority, not innocence. That tells me everything I need to know about your career in law enforcement." Briggs had fully awakened now, eyes wide with growing terror as he assessed their situation. "You stole from an elderly woman today," Carter continued. My mother. Understanding bloomed in Nash's eyes, quickly followed by genuine fear. You think you can intimidate officers of the law? Nash blustered, though his voice betrayed the growing realization of their vulnerability. Kidnapping cops is a federal offense. You're looking at decades in prison. Carter smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. That would require evidence of my presence, documentation of this encounter, witnesses. He gestured to the empty factory floor. I don't see any of those things. Do you, Officer Nash? From his pocket, Carter withdrew a phone, turning the screen toward the bound men. On it played footage from earlier that day. Their encounter with Wilhelmina, the theft, their laughter as they drove away. Body cameras have an interest in vulnerability, Carter explained conversationally. When you think they're off, a remote override can activate them without the indicator light. Fascinating technology. Briggs began trembling visibly. Look, man, it was his idea. I'm still on probation. I was just following my senior officer's lead. Shut up, Briggs, Nash hissed. Following orders, Carter nodded. I've heard that defense before, usually from war criminals I've hunted. He turned his attention back to Nash. Your personnel file shows 17 complaints of excessive force and theft, all dismissed. Your bank account shows regular cash deposits that don't match your salary. You've been stealing from vulnerable citizens for years. Nash's face drained of color. How could you possibly— I could kill you both right now, Carter interrupted, his tone still conversational. Make your bodies disappear so completely your department would assume you simply went AWOL. It would be efficient. The matter-of-fact delivery made the statement more terrifying than any shouted threat. Both officers felt the truth of it in their bones. This man could and would erase them from existence without hesitation. Please, Briggs whispered, all pretense of authority abandoned. I have a family. So does my mother, Carter replied evenly. But that didn't factor into your calculations today, did it? He circled behind Nash, leaning close to his ear. Instead of killing you, I'm going to give you the one thing you've denied others, justice. Carter placed a small device on the floor between them. This contains every instance of your misconduct I could document in 6 hours. By morning, it will be in the hands of Internal Affairs, the FBI Civil Rights Division, and 3 investigative journalists. Every victim you've targeted will be contacted. Every cent you've stolen will be traced. Nash's face contorted with rage and fear. Nobody will believe. Evidence doesn't require belief, Carter cut him off. Your career is over. Your freedom likely follows, but you get to live, which is more mercy than you've shown others. He moved toward the exit, pausing in the doorway. One more thing. If any harm comes to Wilhelmina Carter, any harassment, any accidents, I will know, and I will return. He let the implication hang in the silence. That is a promise from a man who keeps them. By dawn, the West Side Police Precinct descended into chaos. Captain Eleanor Jeffries arrived to find FBI agents in her office, Internal Affairs commandeering the conference room, and a media van parked outside broadcasting live. The evidence package delivered anonymously contained years of systematically documented corruption, not just from Nash and Briggs, but a network of officers targeting vulnerable citizens. The body camera footage of Wilhelmina's robbery, playing on screens throughout the precinct, was damning in its clarity. Officers watched in stunned silence as their colleagues transformed from law enforcement to common thieves before their eyes. How the hell did we miss this? Captain Jeffries demanded of her lieutenant, rage barely contained. The system was designed to miss it, came the reply from Special Agent Rivera, the FBI lead. Officers knew which cameras to disable, which reports to falsify, which complaints to suppress. This wasn't random. It was organized criminal activity wearing badges. Nash and Briggs had been found by patrol officers at shift change, still bound in the abandoned factory, dehydrated and broken. Nash maintained belligerent denial despite the evidence. Briggs, however, crumbled under questioning, confirming everything and implicating 4 other officers in the scheme. By noon, all 6 officers were suspended without pay. By evening, criminal charges were being prepared. The precinct's reputation lay in tatters as victims came forward, mostly elderly, mostly minority, all vulnerable citizens who had suffered in silence until now. Among the evidence was a detailed financial analysis showing exactly how much had been stolen from each victim over the past 3 years. The total approached $500,000. Mysteriously, each victim received an anonymous bank transfer for double their losses before they even knew the investigation was underway. Reporters descended on Wilhelmina's apartment building, seeking comment from the woman whose robbery had exposed the entire operation. They found only neighbors who formed a protective barrier around her door. "Mrs. Carter isn't speaking to anyone," announced Reverend Jackson from her church. "She's been through enough indignity without becoming your headline." Inside her apartment, Wilhelmina watched the news with quiet satisfaction. When her phone rang, she answered immediately. "You're on the news, Ma," came Thaddeus's voice, now thousands of miles away again. "Not me," she corrected. "Just what those officers did. Nobody mentioned you." "That's how it should be," he replied. "Are you okay with all the attention?" Wilhelmina smiled, glancing at the fresh flowers and casseroles neighbors had been delivering all day. "I'm just fine, son. For the first time in a long while, I feel like somebody's watching out for all of us." 3 months after the scandal broke, the West Side Precinct operated under new leadership. Captain Jeffries had resigned in disgrace when investigations revealed she had buried early complaints against Nash and others. Her replacement, Captain Marcus Washington, a 20-year veteran with an impeccable record, had implemented mandatory community engagement programs and civilian oversight committees. Nash pled not guilty despite overwhelming evidence, maintaining his innocence through a bitter trial that exposed decades of racial bias in his policing. The jury deliberated just 4 hours before convicting him on 23 counts, including theft, civil rights violations, and abuse of power. His sentencing, 12 years in federal prison, made national headlines as a rare example of police accountability. Briggs cooperated fully, accepting a plea deal for 3 years probation and permanent disqualification from law enforcement. As part of his community service requirements, he now spoke at police academies about the slippery slope from complicity to criminality. "It started small," he told cadets, voice heavy with regret. "Looking the other way when my partner took $20, then helping him intimidate witnesses, then actively participating. I told myself it was just part of the job, that everyone did it. I was wrong." For Wilhelmina Carter, life had transformed in unexpected ways. The case had made her a reluctant symbol of resilience against corruption. Younger neighbors now escorted her on pension days. The credit union installed a security guard specifically for elderly clients. Community members started a neighborhood watch program that accompanied seniors on errands. Most surprisingly, Wilhelmina found herself appointed to the new Civilian Police Oversight Committee, her gentle wisdom and first-hand experience providing perspective that technical experts couldn't match. "We don't need vengeance," she told the committee during her first meeting. "We need protection and respect. Officers who remember they serve the people, not themselves. Her son called every Sunday, as he always had. Neither discussed how the evidence package had materialized or who might have interrogated the officers that night. Some truths remained family matters. 6 months after the scandal, Wilhelmina sat on her porch with her neighbor Mrs. Jenkins, watching neighborhood children play under the watchful eyes of community volunteers and a patrol car that now regularly circled with friendly waves rather than predatory glances. "You never did say how all this got started," Mrs. Jenkins probed gently. "One day, officers are robbing Pension Day folks. Next day, the FBI's here and everything changes." Wilhelmina smiled, her eyes drifting toward the horizon where, thousands of miles away, her son continued his own form of protection. "Sometimes justice needs a little help finding its way home," she answered simply. "And sometimes the people you underestimate are connected to forces you can't imagine." She patted her friend's hand and changed the subject, content in the knowledge that some shadows protect rather than threaten, and that her son's particular darkness had brought light to their community. 1 year after the scandal that transformed West Side Precinct, Wilhelmina Carter celebrated her 79th birthday surrounded by neighbors, church members, and fellow oversight committee volunteers. The modest community center buzzed with a conversation and laughter, a stark contrast to the fear that had previously permeated pension days and police encounters. At the celebration's edge sat a man few recognized, dressed simply, watchful, with eyes that missed nothing. When Wilhelmina spotted him, her face brightened with joy reserved only for her son. Commander Thaddeus Carter had secured rare leave to visit, materializing as he always did, unexpectedly and precisely when needed. "Your neighborhood looks different, Ma," he observed quietly during a private moment. "Feels different, too," Wilhelmina nodded. "People stand taller now, even the new officers. They know someone's watching." A young police officer approached cautiously, extending his hand to Thaddeus. "Sir, I'm Officer Rodriguez. I just wanted to thank you for your service, and to tell Mrs. Carter how much her work on the Oversight Committee means to those of us trying to rebuild trust." After the officer left, Thaddeus smiled. "Seems like you found your own kind of commanding role." "I learned from watching you," she replied. "Sometimes protection doesn't come from strength alone. It comes from accountability, from community, from refusing to let darkness win." As twilight settled over the celebration, mother and son sat together in comfortable silence, two different kinds of guardians. One operating in daylight through wisdom and moral courage, the other moving through shadows with precision and lethal capability. Both necessary, both watching, both ensuring that those who preyed on the vulnerable would find neither mercy nor escape. The shadows had eyes now, and justice had teeth.